All right, welcome back. This is part 2 of Building Bridges, Supporting Families with Neurodivergent Children. And last time was background information, kind of introducing the topics. And today we're really going to apply it to our day-to-day work. So this will hopefully be more practical support ideas for how you can really implement some of the concepts that we talked about last time and how to support yourself in the process. Again, my name is Claire Ibrahim. I'm a speech therapist, and I'm the founder of East Bay Child Development Center in San Leandro. Glad to see you guys back today. All right, so session overviews. Last time, session 1, we did some introductions. We talked a little bit about neurodiversity, what it is, understanding, autism, why we're seeing more and more prevalence in our communities, what families are going through, specifically feelings of grief and going through different stages of grief, and how we build trust and sort of start building those, those first building blocks towards bridging communication gaps with families. And then you guys had some homework to do. So thinking about or observing an interaction and reporting back on what you observed there in that interaction. Today is session 2. Again, we're going to go over some practical support strategies using those 5 family protective factors. Really dive into more role-specific applications that hopefully you can use for your work. Setting professional boundaries and taking care of yourself. And then we'll leave you with a 30-day action plan to carry these concepts over. So welcome back. All right, let's do a quick recap. Again, neurodiversity, it's a term that refers to the natural variation in how brains work. And then when we're talking about or thinking about children who are neurodivergent, we always want to approach it from a strengths-based perspective, not deficit-based. So, starting that conversation with the parent or caregiver about what are the great things that their child is doing? What do we notice as their strengths? And trying to flip it in a way that we're pointing out or launching our conversation from a place of acknowledging and celebrating strengths, what they can do, what they love doing, what they're good at, not what they can't do, not what they're struggling with, right? Opening up that conversation in a way that we're on the same team. We both recognize that this child has a lot of strengths, and every child has strengths. And so it's important to start thinking about the children that we work with from a strengths-based perspective, not deficit-based. Today, we're going to talk a lot more about the family protective factors. Here they are again: parental resilience, social connections, knowledge of parenting and child development, concrete supports in time of need, and social emotional competence of children. And I'm going to preface this today by saying the idea here is not to memorize what the 5 protective factors are, but to kind of keep them in your mind, in the back of your mind, as a framework when we think about what are some of the tools that we can strengthen for families in order to for families to be successful. And this is for all families, but more importantly, for families of neurodivergent children whose needs are heightened and more intensified. So again, we're not going to be tested on memorizing the protective factors, but it's just a framework. Think about it as it's like a bookshelf for you to put books on, right? You need a framework that you're going to build on, that you're going to place your ideas on, so that it gives us guidance. Okay, just a recap here that communication matters so much. And so, sharing observations with the family without judgment, collaborating with families, reminding families that, hey, we're on the same side here. We're here to support the child. Asking open-ended questions, so leading with curiosity, and always acknowledging that the parent is the expert on the child, even if the child is spending more time with you than with the parent, right? We know that, especially in early childhood education or in the school systems, children are with us all day, 5 days a week. And so we do kind of get into this space where we might feel like we're the expert on a child, but always defer to the parent, always defer to the caregiver, and acknowledge that they're the true expert in the child, and we're just here to support. Avoid comparing to neurotypical peers. Again, avoid using that deficit language, talking about what they can't do, but rather focusing on what their strengths are, and avoid making assumptions in any way, shape, or form about the family unit, family structure, ethnic background, anything like that. And then lastly, we talked about your intention does not always match up with the impact. And so, we all come into this work with good intentions, and we're trying to do our best to support families and their children, but it doesn't always land the way we hope. And that's okay. We have a case study that digs into that a little bit deeper. Any questions before I go on about what we talked about last time? Anything that you've been thinking about or that's come up for anyone? Feel free to type in the chat or unmute yourself and just put it out there. So just like last time, we're going to use Slido. So get your phone handy. Remember, this is where we scan the QR code and respond to the questions that are posed to you. All responses are anonymous, so feel free to share openly. And your responses help shape our discussion. So I encourage you to please participate. Everyone have their phones ready. Again, you're going to scan the QR code when you see the slide that comes up with the cloud on it. Let's try it. Okay, so this one is going to ask you to use just one emoji to describe how you are feeling today. So go ahead and scan the code, and you're going to need to switch over from alphabet letters to emojis and enter one emoji to describe how you're feeling today. See how everyone's doing on this sunny? Is it sunny? Thursday. This is great. Not sure what the fish means, but I'll take it. All right. All right, let's see if we can wake you guys up here. Everyone's feeling sleepy. I feel you. All right, so let's talk about your homework. So the assignment here was to observe and document one positive family interaction using the handout that was provided. Do folks have some feedback? Anyone want to share one strategy that worked well in your observation? Feel free to just unmute yourself and go ahead and share.
I guess I could go. I worked with a parent last week, and I had the little handout that you gave us, and I was just really reminding myself of like just starting with strengths. And that's like how I initiated the conversation, was just highlighting the child's strengths, and then also listening. I think those were the two, just listening and being curious and asking questions. And it ended up being a really good conversation that I had with the parents. So yeah, so I'm more mindful of just like starting with strengths now. Like it's becoming more of a habit. And because I see the outcome a little bit more like engaged, and there's a little bit more collaboration. So that was helpful.
Can you remind us your role again, Ruby?
I'm a family partner
Okay.
at the Hume Center.
Great. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have a kid in my class that I was, we're working with the parents. Most times the mom is more open to talking. The dad is a little bit on the quiet or defensive. I don't know how to describe that. But the child is learning to potty train. And the other day, the child went to the bathroom without being asked to go potty. And I was like, he did everything by himself. And, you know, and all of that, even though he's on the spectrum. And I was like, wow. It was like, you would think I won the lottery. So when that happened to pick up that day, and I approached him and I told him, you could see he was so excited. He was happy to listen. I couldn't believe it was the same person. So I said to myself, oh, wow, this is kind of interesting with what you were saying, that when you start with the strengths and stuff like that, it's, you know, they are more open to talk and to, you know, listen to them and whatever they have to say. That was, you know, kind of practical and interesting to me.
I love it. Thanks for sharing. It's great when you have those celebration moments, right? And you're excited to share with the family. And it really does build partnership and collaboration, like you said. Thank you. That's great.
I
We
was
have time
gonna
for one more. Yeah,
oh,
go
I
ahead.
was gonna share too, but right now I'm more so an admin at a early care and education um company called Kadango. So when I was doing the assignment, I used to be an ABA, so I was reflecting on what I did when I was working with families and all that stuff. And similar to, I forgot who was talking, but similar to you, I was also I encountered like a family that had a dad that didn't really want to talk much or was against a lot of the things that we were practicing with the kiddo. So it was a little difficult to kind of interact. But I mean, I think it was more so like seeing the progress for them on their end than like, and also having a stranger in their home is a little difficult to like kind of adjust to. So things like that. That's all I kind of was able to reflect on so far. But yeah.
Great. Thanks, Gina. Um, Anyone have any questions or challenges that came up? Or maybe, you know, this doesn't have to be with the assignment, but anyone experience any challenges communicating with families that they want to share?
We had a challenge. We have a family that the staff is very positive and giving them lots of opportunities for collaboration. And it's not the staff that is finding things that are negative, it's the parents.
Mm,
So trying to listen and not overtalk when the parent is being very negative about their own child who's standing right there.
mm,
And so that's kind of been a challenge. And then you know, without going into too much, the child has has physical difficulties as well as being neurodivergent and getting mixed messages from what parents are saying, and then they also have an ABA and a nurse that's in the home often on totally different stories about, like, well, potty training was one of them. Yeah, potty training, eating, sleeping, all of that. So that's just our struggle this week.
yeah, so sounds like, and remind me your role, Cheryl.
I'm the on-site director and coordinator for the STEAM preschool program for Pleasanton Unified.
Got it. Yeah. So, you know, when we do IEP meetings and we ask for parent input, we always start with what are the child's strengths, preferences, and interests, right? And so, I love that because it kind of opens up the conversation where the parent is like forced to say something positive, you know, before we get into what are the parent concerns. And I think I've been in situations where we lead with that and we ask the question, and the parent launches into their list of grievances, right? And reminding the parent, like, okay, I hear you. So acknowledging that we heard them, but what are the child's strengths? You know, like kind of rediverting the conversation back to making them kind of think about answering that question, or even kind of like, I hate to use the word forcing, but like encouraging them to think about it in a different way. And you know, a lot of times these parents are kind of overwhelmed by the challenges, and we want to use our time with them to encourage them to also think about the strengths. And if they can't come up with anything, then I think it's on us as someone who's working with the child to point out, well, here are the things that I see, you know, that he's doing really well, or that are going really well for him. And we can always find something, even if it's just one thing, you know, to give the parents that new perspective. And lastly, I wanted to bring it back to those stages of grief and allowing space for us to remember that parents are going through different stages in grief and processing that maybe their child is not developing neurotypically or physically, you know, in a typical way. And we have to allow parents grace to process that in their own way as well. So while it might land on us in a negative or potentially negative way, we want to always remember, you know, allow grace for parents too and understand kind of where they're coming from as well. Hope that helps.
And I have a quick comment.
Yes.
Regarding allowing the parents, giving them space. I'm Imelda Rivas here at New Haven Unified School District. We provide play groups for kinder readiness. We were asked to come to one of the school sites and provide a 5-week pilot program. And we could see our team, as a team, we could see the parents that would really benefit from connecting to resources like Help Me Grow. And the teachers are needing the support, but the parent is not on board with that yet. So it is tough to stand aside and let them have their time. They will, when they're ready, we're here. And so it was hard to leave the program with knowing that the teachers will continue to struggle, the little ones will continue to fall behind. And interestingly enough, yesterday one of the parents was ready and had a conversation with her this morning, but it takes a moment sometimes, or maybe she would have never, maybe it wouldn't have been in our time, like this school year, but maybe someone else, she would have been ready in the future. But this is a good reminder to stand back, let them in a gentle way, let them continue to support, be on the sidelines, and when they're ready, we're here. But it is definitely really, it's tough as a staff member to stand back and wait for them. But as a parent of one, of course, we appreciate the space. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the feedback. Which district are you with, Imelda?
New Haven Unified School.
New Haven.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. All right, so let's move on. So again, 5 family protective factors. Let's just define them, talk about what they are, what they mean. So parental resilience. This is how parents or caregivers manage stress and are able to function well. We know that parenting is very stressful, and parenting a neurodivergent child is exponentially more stressful. And working through systems that are very challenging. And, you know, how do you, as a parent, caregiver, bounce back from when things don't go your way? So it's that bounce back factor. That's how I think of resilience. Social connections. Does the parent caregiver have positive relationships and support? Someone that they could call if they needed a ride to the emergency room, or someone they could call if they were just having a bad day and needed to vent. Knowledge of parenting and child development. Again, this is when we have children, they don't come with a manual, there's no user manual, right? So how do you learn parenting skills and knowledge of child development, you know, developmental norms, and what should your child be doing by a certain age and that kind of thing? How do you learn that? And being able to understand and respond to your child's needs. Concrete support in times of needs, and this refers to access to resources and services, you know, therapy, childcare, preschool. These are having access to those services for your child and then also for yourself. And then lastly, social and emotional competence of children. So supporting the child's ability to interact and communicate so that that child can grow up in a healthy way and be able to navigate their environment successfully, express their wants and needs, and have their needs met when the parent or caregiver is around and is not around. Again, this is a framework. You're not expected to memorize them. You know, some of us deal with these factors every day in our work, and so we get to know them. But the idea here, again, is not to drive them home as something you need to know, but again, just to understand that this is a framework that we're working within. It is relationship centered, and all of us here do relationship based work, right? We connect with families, and that is our Those relationships are the foundation for our support. This framework is evidence-based. Research shows that these factors reduce stress for families and overall improve outcomes for children. They are universal, so they benefit all families, including and especially those with neurodivergent children. And they're actionable because they give you concrete ways to support the families within your role. All right, let's talk about them. So number one, building parental resilience. Again, that's that bounce back factor. When things don't go your way, you have a bad day, child is really struggling. We have a preschool on site, and we frequently get families whose child has been kicked out of preschool for behaviors, or asked to leave because the staff at their preschool can no longer support them for whatever reason. That's a setback as a parent, especially if both, parents are working, single parent is working, you got to get to work. And if you lose your childcare, that is a huge hit to your quality of life and your day-to-day operations. So how are you able to bounce back from that? How are you able to manage the stress and manage your emotions around it, and be able to kind of pivot and continue to be successful, not allowing setbacks to crush you or overwhelm you. And so let's talk about that. I want to think about those of us that are here that are parents. How do you, as a parent or grandparent or any kind of caregiver, build parental resilience? Love to hear from everyone. So feel free to express here. What tools do you have in your toolkit that build resilience for yourself? Mm-hmm. Take a couple more here. I'm seeing community and communication as the big ones. All right. Thank you for sharing. So when we go back to the protective factors, you can see that number one and number two kind of fit hand in hand together. And so when we're thinking about how do we support parental resilience or boost it, community comes up a lot. And so that ties into social connections, right? So we want to encourage building community among our family members as a way of supporting their parental resilience as like the first step, because community is sort of the easiest one to tap into. So perhaps a question you could ask the family is, tell me about your support community. What does your support network look like? As a way to get them thinking about what is the community that they can tap into for support and for resilience. Because as humans, we need community, right? It takes a village, as they say, to raise a child. And we think about like our oldest civilizations from the beginning of humankind, right? We lived close together. We lived in communities. We lived in villages, and, you know, people helped each other raise kids. In today's modern society, we're so isolated at times. It feels like we're isolated, that maybe people don't feel like they have those connections that they can lean into for support, for those positive relations, just to get together and have coffee with another mom and vent about how hard it is raising a toddler, you know, can really feed into and boost that parental resilience. Someone that you can call and talk to, someone that you can talk it over with. And then, you know, in addition to having community, having other resources, and that's that concrete support in times of need, a therapist, you know, someone else, another service provider, or someone that can help provide that more concrete support. But the most important factor that really boosts parental resilience is community and those social connections. So I do feel like both of those kind of work hand in hand. And the main way that you as a provider, service provider, can help support parental resilience is encouraging your families to form those social connections, referring them to support groups, referring them to Mommy and Me, or even, you know, encouraging them to take their child to a play group or a play date where they can make friends with other parents. And, you know, our preschool, we're doing a family picnic on the weekend just to bring families together, because, you know, a lot of times parents are just coming in and out. They're picking up their kids, they're leaving, dropping off and going, you know, everyone's in a hurry. But building in these community events where families can get together and just hang out and the kids can play. And with the hope that by creating these opportunities, we create community within our preschool that in turn will feed into developing parental resilience for our families. So that's I feel like that's an easy one. It's an easy win. And you know, by putting parents in touch with community really helps build that parental resilience again. And then, as some of the folks mentioned, celebrating those small wins together. So when you do see the child go use the potty by themselves, or feed themselves, or do something that they haven't done before that's worth celebrating, celebrating that win with the parent, again, feeds into that parental resilience. Like, hey, my kid can do great things. And I know that I've got a team that's rooting for my child, just like I am. That also builds parental resilience, and that you feeling as a parent or caregiver that you have a team that's backing you up, that you have other, you know, care providers that are supporting you and supporting your child by celebrating their wins. Keeps you kind of moving forward, even if you're having a bad day or if things aren't always going in a positive direction. Like, hey, my kid used the potty on his own. That was amazing. And I know this sort of ties into maintaining hope, right? That things can progress, and my child will learn to use the potty one day. They're not going to be in diapers for the foreseeable future. All right, we already did that one. Thanks for your participation. I love spending time in nature too. I need to do more of that. All right, strengthening social connections. We've talked about that a little bit. Here's a picture of a toddler play group, infant play group, building those positive relationships, building support networks, and reducing isolation. This is a really important thing to keep in mind. We want to, as much as possible, mitigate parenting in isolation. When parents are not part of a community, especially single parents, it allows opportunities for things to go south. Sometimes when parents feel like nobody's watching, there's more space for us to let the reins go a little bit. And for example, we have a family at our preschool that has a history of substance abuse, and we started to notice a shift in the energy, right? Where we're absolutely not going to come out and accuse them of, hey, you look like, are you using again, right? We're not going to ask them that. But you notice, right? When families come into your center, you start to notice a shift in energy. They're coming in later than normal. They're picking up later than normal. It's just a quality that has shifted. And asking them kind of how are things going in a very kind of generic way, we found out that they had a nanny who moved out of the country. And grandma was helping out, but grandma needed to be moved to a care home because she's getting older. So their support network was kind of crumbling to the point where they found themselves parenting in isolation. And in turn, that isolation led to getting back into using substances. Because there's no one watching, there's no one supporting, there's no one taking the load off of them or giving them a break. And so we want to avoid parenting in isolation as much as possible, again, by introducing support networks, introducing resources, reminding parents that they're not alone in this journey. And sometimes it's just as little as checking in. Hey, how are things going? Is there anything I can do to support your family? Just asking that one question can open up a conversation in parents and caregivers reaching out for help, or asking for resources, or just being open to you connecting them with a support group or building a community partnership. Inviting them to the picnic, right? Hey, we're having a picnic on Sunday. We hope to see you guys there. Are you guys coming to the picnic? Sometimes just that little extra nudge can bring them out of that isolation and have them engage with other families that can kind of redirect the behavior, negative behaviors. Questions or comments about that? Anyone have a similar story or situation? Similar but different?
For me as a case manager, usually at least once a month, I'll check in or tap in with my clients and kind of just send them a message saying like, hey, are there any resources I can offer you to make your life easier? And so at least once a month, I like check in with somebody on the caseload and do that.
Great. And what kind of response do you get from that?
So people will say, oh, I need help with like food resources, or do you know about any upcoming like holiday giveaways? And then sometimes some folks will say, oh no, I'm okay. So yeah, it varies.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you offer the kinds of supports that are available in your reach out email? Or do
Sorry,
you
what
just
do you
leave
mean?
it open-ended? Like, is there anything I can do to support you versus
Oh,
like, here are the ways that we can support?
yeah, I leave it open just because or you know what? It's because I'm really trying to move away from maybe offering up resources and really asking them, how can I best support you? And yeah, I don't know, clients will say things that I just wouldn't expect. Like the other day, I was, helping a client because he owes back rent and whatnot. And I would think what would be most helpful is for us to sit down and work on an application together. But he actually said, what would be helpful is if like you, me, and the property manager hop on like a three-way call and do that. So yeah, it's surprising sometimes what clients will say they need support on instead of just sending them
Yeah, it's not what
a
you
bunch
think,
of
right? Yeah, I
Mhm.
love that. It reminds me of like, somebody who had a friend maybe who had like surgery, and we tend to be like, hey, let me know if there's anything you need, right? Versus like, let me know if there's anything you need. I could bring dinner over tomorrow, or I can walk the dog for you, right? So I think it's or more like, hey, how are you doing? And then just walking away versus like, hey, how are you doing? Like actually waiting to listen to hear. I'm not saying that's what you're doing, but like in addition to asking, but also offering like, here are some ways that I can support. So that checks in with them. It also offers, here's some suggestions, which might decrease the number of families that say, no, I'm good, right? Versus like, or you might offer some suggestions of resources or tools that they didn't even know existed. So I would encourage you to offer up a couple things. I think people are also, I don't think that dissuades people from also letting you know what they actually need, but I think also encouraging you to share like, here are some resources that are available in case you didn't know, kind of thing. Thanks for sharing, Kelly.
Of course, good points.
I just
Cheryl?
wanted to say,
Yeah.
I don't know if other USD programs have the same policy, but we're not allowed to make recommendations. So if we know of a support group or something like that, we can't say like, oh, I recommend you going to this support group. But I'm trying to work. We're hiring a new family support advocate. Trying to work with them like how can we skirt the legal part of it and just say, here's a list that we don't necessarily recommend, but you might want to look into them. Yeah, it's that weird touchy area in between. And also trying to work with my staff of like, yes, we're supportive, we want to listen to, but you've got to have boundaries. You're not a marriage counselor.
Right.
A lot of times there's a lot of family stress and a lot of family trauma, and you can very easily get sucked into the whole family dynamics, and then it can spiral.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and we'll talk about that later in this training. Yeah, I think using a family resource navigator is a great idea. So it's like an outside source that's not directly tied to the district. So the district is not held liable. My understanding is that making recommendations from the district would only be for services that folks have to pay for to take the district off the hook for financial liability. But like community supports, are you also not allowed to recommend those
So
if they're free of charge?
for one of our families, they were looking for like support in the evenings, and there are some free or there's other resources, but we're not allowed to say, hey, I would recommend going through this or this. I can just say contact regional center or
Yeah,
but I can't, even though I have the name of a person, I can't give them the name.
got it. Got it. Yeah, that's unfortunate. But yeah, using a go-between would be the way to go, or even through the PTA, or sometimes there's like a advisory board through special education where it's more like a parent advisory board. Do you guys have something like that? Or maybe think about forming some sort of parent-led entity that you can refer other parents to. So then that kind of covers both bases, right? You're strengthening those social connections by introducing them to other parents who are struggling with maybe some of the similar things, and then with the hope and idea that those parents are going to have access to resources or other referral sources. All right. Anyone else? Good stuff here. I love it. Okay, number 3, enhancing knowledge of child development. So again, this is the part that parenting doesn't come with a manual. How do we know what are developmental milestones for young children? And then that's just for neurotypical children. On top of that, understanding neurodivergent development, which is another thick layer that parents need to learn about. Knowing how to support your child's needs, feeling confident in your parenting approaches. And this is for all parents and caregivers. So how do you support in boosting parent education and parent knowledge of child development? I want to hear from you guys. How do you do it? Especially our ECE providers, preschool teachers. How do you teach parents about child development?
Well, for us, family partners, we share our living experience, and that's one of the ways that I can talk to the parents about the children behavior
Mm,
based on my experience as a parent.
mm. Can you say more?
Eh,
Give an example, maybe.
well, parents get, you know, very frustrated and upset when the children throw a tantrum, for example.
Mm,
But some of them, when they are their first child, they don't know that they are trying to express something that
yeah.
that but they don't have the words to do it. So they have to be very calm, very patient, and try to direct them to be able for them to communicate what they want. That's one example.
Right. So sharing your lived experience as a parent, giving them, examples or, leading by your experience. Great. Yeah. Anyone else? Thank you, Maria. So teaching positive behavior strategies, one strategy that we use is we try not to use the word no with children. So rather than saying stop running, we might say use your walking feet. You know, instead of saying stop talking, we say put a bubble in your mouth, so flipping it around so that these are positive behavior management strategies rather than negative or punishing or punitive. And we find that children respond better to that kind of redirection rather than being told no all the time, right? No, stop, don't do that. And so that's something that's another easy one that we can teach or model for parents. So positive behavior strategies. And modeling effective interaction. So if we found a strategy that works for the child, we might invite the parent in to observe and then, kind of teach them what we're doing at the preschool that they could maybe replicate at home. So these are some ways that we can help. There's also the CDC has developmental norms for different age developments. You can just go to the CDC website. They have them in all languages. And this is something that you can print out and have on hand to give to parents as a resource. Like, this is what my child should be doing at 2 months. This is what my child should be doing at 18 months in all the developmental areas. So speech and language, gross motor, fine motor, cognitive development, social emotional development. So that is a great resource that you can hand out. Does anyone here use that as a resource for parents, the CDC milestones? So that's some hands there. Good. So that's something that's accessible to everyone. So, this is what your child is doing, and let's go through it together. Let's see what is the child doing now? What are they not doing right now? And how can we support them in developing the different milestone areas? So that, sometimes parents come into our speech therapy department and they say, my 3-year-old is not using full sentences yet, and we have to inform and educate parents that, hey, that's still not developmentally appropriate for a 3-year-old. Everyone is kind of in different stages of their speech and language development. And so we want to make sure that parents' expectations are realistic and that they are within accurate developmental norm ranges. And so then we can use a resource like the CDC guidelines to show them, okay, this is what your child should be doing. Just because his older sister was talking in full sentences at 2.5 doesn't mean that little brother is going to be doing it, because every child is growing and developing on their own timeline, right? So using those resources to help parents understand what's appropriate, what their child should be doing, and what is not expected at this time. We have a 2-year-old that parents are like, hey, we really want you guys to start working on potty training. Like, no, he's 2. That's not developmentally appropriate. And so educating parents and helping them understand what is for now, what's for later, and helping enhance their knowledge of development. So question for you guys, why is this important? Why is it important for parents to know and understand child development norms? People typing in the chat.
Yeah,
Go
mentioned
ahead.
helps reduce their stress.
I feel like I'm being super chatty today, but I used to have an infant toddler program, and now I have pre-K up to kindergarten. And I think that parents knowing what is appropriate for their age helps them to not set their expectations like way too high or way too low.
Yeah.
And it kind of helps them and to realize there's such a big,
Variation, right? Yeah.
between, what's considered normal and like and temper tantrums and potty accidents. That's normal.
Yeah.
That's we expect that. That's part of growing up. That's learning that you're a separate person from those around you.
Yeah.
Have your
Yeah.
own opinions. So
And for the parents in the room, how many times has this happened to you when your child was growing up and they were little and you're struggling with something, you mention it to their teacher, and the teacher just says those words to you? Cheryl just said, hey, that's normal. That is such a powerful thing to say to a parent. And it just, as a parent, that just brings down your stress exponentially, because it's like, oh my God, you just validated my experience. Wait, you mean this is normal? That it goes such a long way. And so, that knowledge of development is so, so important, and in reducing stress, and in turn, building parental resilience, right? Because by reducing that stress factor, parents are able to bounce back, and parents can reassure each other, and parents can in turn, through their community, support other parents by saying, hey, you know what your child is doing, my preschool teacher told me that's normal. And so, they're spreading the good word, right? They're helping support each other through community, building parental resilience. So all of these things tie together. And, just by something as simple, by validating that what their child is doing is normal and accepted for their age, can carry such a big weight.
It also helps. We had a child during the COVID time.
Yes.
Parents were working online. And so for their little child that was about 18 months, they just give him the iPad, and the kid just does all that stuff, says nothing. So because of that, they weren't observing to notice that he should at least be babbling, not saying words, but at least be babbling or be communicating, but he was just always blank. So it was when they brought the child to our center, and the teacher said, oh, wait, he spent a whole week, not a word, nothing. This is not normal. And, the teacher started talking with the parents to find out how it goes at home and stuff like that. That was when the parents realized that, oh, so you mean he's supposed to at least show face expressions and stuff like this? And we're like educating them, and they're like, oh, something is not
Not
right
yeah.
here. Yeah. So they had to introduce them to the regional center and and all that and all that. And the parents were so excited and happy. They worked with the teacher to get help and all of that, and so he was able to get a lot of help, ABA, and all that stuff to help. So that also helps the parent by teaching them to observe and to notice, not also set high expectations, but also to know when nothing is also at the bottom of the ladder, I would say, to know that there's a
Yeah, absolutely. And this ties in nicely to the next one, which is providing concrete support. But before we move on, I just want to remind, we don't want to start that conversation with, I know you didn't do this, but just a reminder, we don't want to start with, hey, he's not babbling. What do you want to start that conversation with? The child's strength.
the child's strength.
Yes.
I said that to explain what was going on. That was not exactly the way the conversation. Of course, we'll tell them what he's doing first, but just to highlight what we're talking about.
Yes, absolutely. Just want to get that in there. But yes, absolutely. And so what you did was, by educating the parents on child development, what the child should be doing by this age, you were in turn able to connect them with concrete supports, which is number 4. So you shared a resource. You shared access to the regional center, right? You put parents in touch with regional center, and then help them navigate that system. And you connected them with practical assistance that would help get support, or introduce them to, therapy, connect them with therapy, ABA, speech therapy, to help boost their child's development, right? Assisting with system navigation. I recommend have you called the regional center yet? Are you familiar with regional center of the East Bay? I can help you call. Sometimes that, just saying that also goes a long way. If parents are hesitant or reluctant or scared, or, all the feelings, don't speak the language, not confident in their English skills, don't have a phone, anything could get in the way of system navigation. And for you to say, let's call together, provides that community connection. And in turn, you're connecting them with concrete supports that are going to help with getting the child the services they need, right? You're not an ABA provider, but you can connect them to a resource that's going to get them ABA therapy. You're not a speech therapist, but you're going to connect them with a resource that will help with those referrals, to get those resources that the child needs to develop. So providing concrete support is an important way that you can support families. Last one here is supporting the child's competence. So 1 through 4 had to do with resources for parents, but number 5 really kind of leans into supporting the child's competence. So how do we support a child's ability to communicate and express their wants and needs? How do we teach children how to self-regulate, how to manage social interactions, right? How do we do that? Any ideas?
One idea that I heard about was, let's see, like the child is in the same space as their parent, and the parent makes like a fake phone call. So just like pretending to be on the phone with somebody and getting sort of like upset, and then kind of talking out loud to themselves saying like, I feel like angry or something right now. I'm gonna go for a walk. And then the child seeing that as an example, as a way to just like regulate or how to deal with an emotion like anger.
Great. So teaching parents how to model self-regulation, and teaching parents how to model resilience. Those are great ways to teach children. But that goes of the assumption that the child is paying attention. And a lot of times our little ones and neurodivergent children are maybe not as tuned into the what the parent is doing or modeling. And so, you know, we really do support children's competence through being in a social setting. So being in preschool, being in TK, being around other kids, around teachers who can help build those skills in children, teach them how to self-regulate, teach them how to interact socially with other kids on a day-to-day basis. So support communication development if they need speech therapy or communication supports, building on that child's strengths and creating those supportive environments. That's how we really build that child's competence. And this might not be anyone here's role. If you're a teacher, yes, absolutely, that's your role. But if you're a family navigator, your role might just be connecting the parent to the resource. It might be helping the parent enroll the child in daycare or preschool. So maybe connecting them with bananas or 4Cs to help them get childcare, to get the child out of the home and into a social environment where they can start learning and practicing these skills. If a child is at home, they're going to have very limited opportunities to practice and get better at things like self-regulation and social interaction because they're not interacting socially. And so we want to get them into school. So these are great opportunities so they can kind of work on these skills themselves. So whether you're in this role or you have the power to connect parents to enroll the child in a program where we can build on these skills for their child. Any other comments on that one? All right, so now let's talk about role-specific applications. This is you guys and all your different roles. Exploring how different disciplines can apply these protective factors in your unique context every day. So anyone here a home visitor or a public health nurse or going to the family's home on a regular basis? Your unique opportunity is that you get to have one-on-one time in the family space, right? That's a really precious time that you get to really be embedded in the home and see what's going on, understand family dynamics. And in doing so, you get to build trust over multiple visits and see the family in their natural environment, have access to the whole family system, like understand who's coming in and out of the house, see siblings and understand those family dynamics. So that is a unique opportunity. And by doing so, you can model interactions during visits. You can share developmental information with the family. You can connect the family to community resources, and you can validate parents and build their resilience by saying, hey, I saw how you did that. That great job, modeling whatever the skill was that they're trying to teach the child, or great job modeling simple language, or giving the child time to respond to your question, giving choices. regulating your own emotions so that your child can learn how to do that. So this is for home visitors, ways that you can apply their factors. Family advocates and community workers. So your unique opportunities here are that you're knowledgeable in how to navigate these complex systems with families, how to connect families with resources, potentially how to bridge cultural and linguistic barriers if you speak the same language, and you can act as a cultural broker to help connect the family and not just understand from a language perspective, but also from a cultural perspective, what cultural ideas and preconceived notions different cultures have, your culture, that you're trying to bridge with this family, what they might have, what they believe about child development. Connecting families to concrete resources and to the community at large. So maybe to another Spanish speaking support group or Chinese language speaking parent support groups kind of thing. So in doing so, you are reducing that parenting and isolation by making peer connections. You're building resilience through connecting families to resources and helping them support systems and advocating for them within that cultural context, which is, so important. Mental health and foster care providers have that background knowledge to address trauma and emotional needs, to support families during crises and transitions. You have that therapeutic relationship, and you're able to coordinate complex care needs. And you can apply protective factors by addressing it from a trauma-informed perspective, building caregiver capacity and resilience through emotional and social emotional support emotional regulation strategies, and help families coordinate across multiple systems. ECE, preschool teachers, daycare providers, early Head Start providers, teachers, educators, you have those daily interactions with children and their families. You get to observe that child's development over time and celebrate those wins. You have the power to create inclusive environments where all children are welcome and included, and to partner with families regularly. And you can apply those protective factors by building parent-to-parent connections, like the picnic that we're having. Share developmental observations by looking at those checklists, parent-teacher conferences. We have one in the fall and one in the spring, and that's a beautiful way to compare, here are the things that your child was doing back in October, here we are in April and May, let's compare, oh my God, look at all the development that your child has made, let's celebrate all the things that they're doing now that they weren't doing, 6 months ago. That's a great way of building trust and connecting with families and building parental resilience. Creating sensory-friendly spaces that are there to support neurodivergent children's needs, and supporting each child's unique strengths daily as ECE, early child care providers, again, always leaning into the child's strengths, understanding what each child's strengths are, and supporting those strengths on a daily basis. All right, back to Slido here. Get your phone ready. What is one way that you can apply protective factors in your specific role? So please share a concrete example from your work setting. We've used lots of examples here of ways that you can boost family support through this protective factor framework. Which one resonated with you? Something you can start doing today, or something you're already doing, or you can do more of. Great. Take a couple more here. Thank you for sharing. Awesome. Great. All right. Any questions or comments? Anything in the chat? A lot of good stuff here. All right, it's time for breakout rooms. We've got a couple of case studies here. Please take a screenshot of the case study in case it goes away. Take a picture with your phone. This case study is about the Chen family, and I'll read the background. The Chen family recently immigrated from Taiwan. Their 4-year-old daughter, Lily, attends Head Start. Lily is very quiet, doesn't make eye contact, and prefers to play alone. Her teacher, Sarah, is concerned but unsure how to approach the family about developmental screening. In the Chen family's culture, there's stigma around developmental differences. Lily's grandmother lives with them and has strong opinions about how children should be raised. So your role, you are Sarah, the Head Start teacher. Everyone take a picture of that. And then these are the questions. So you can take a picture of these too in case they go away. We'll bring the questions back. But so when we go to the breakout rooms, we're going to just take 5 minutes to discuss these questions. And we'll have the person in the group with the shortest hair share out to the larger group. If you don't want to do breakout rooms, just hang out for 5 minutes, formulate your own responses to these questions, and we'll come back and talk together.
I'll share a little bit. It was, I guess, we were explained that from the Asian community, sometimes those type of beliefs are there where not being able to access some stuff is not so much because you don't want to, it's more the way that your culture looks at it. And so then we were talking about this will impact a lot the decisions, the way family takes decisions, and what type of communication you could use it as to approach it. And I'm going to steal some of these because as a family navigator myself, I usually start with my own story because I am a parent with children with disabilities. So then I start with my story, and I think that that helps me out, but not everybody has the same outcome. But I guess it was like talk about stories that you've heard with like using examples, because it's also how do you tell a person with your how do you approach this part? And so we talked about 1 and 2, and so communicating and approaching it, that's really hard. Like I said, I do use my own story and my children's story, but then somebody else said that using other people's stories or depending on your job, so it doesn't look like, you know, you have to be kind of sensitive to that part. So that would be good when I usually use mine, but
Yeah, I like it. So sharing your own experience to build trust, right? So number 2, right? Building trust, like, hey, this is what happened to me, or this is what I experienced. Love it. Thanks for sharing, Emily. Okay, room 2, Autumn, Daya, Annie, Nathan, and Serena.
I can share a little bit about what we talked. We did get to all the questions actually. We really
That's
only talked
okay.
about the first
That's
one.
okay.
But yeah, we really mainly talked about like how like in Asian cultures, like you know, like a lack of eye contact and like, you know, not talking back and like that's like culturally appropriate. And so like for us, we saw that as more of like you know, approach things with curiosity with the parents. Like don't assume that like her Lily's behaviors are like necessarily like red flags to be assessed. Especially like they recently moved to the country and that it might be like quite normal for her to be like reserved and private. But just like kind of like monitoring it over the months to see like if there are other red flags that might pop up that are not related to that might go outside of like cultural norms for them.
Absolutely. I love that. Don't jump to conclusions.
Yeah.
And understanding that different cultures see things that's not a red flag. I love that. This could be normal for them. Thanks for sharing. Room 3, we've got Jessica and Luam, Maria, Omolabake, and Regina.
I think I'll go. Well, it was Maria, but I can go and present the team. I think it's more of we talked about how the cultural belief impact the trans family's response to concerns is that we were going to focus on the grandmother since the strongest, resistance is from, I would not say resistance, but the strongest opinion is coming from the grandmother. Understanding what the culture, what the opinion is about. First, and then approach it, building trust using language, the right language where we can be able to explain thoroughly and understand what it is the hesitancy about it, and also one thing that we were not able to, but I wanted to add was the fact that they recently came to this country.
Yeah.
And adjusting and new culture, new society, it might be a different approach. So starting at that and see where the family want to go from there was some of the things that we discussed. We didn't go through the whole thing.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. I love that using the interpreter.
Hola, it was Cheryl and I. And
Okay.
I loved our conversation because from the setting and the work that we do, for me, it was providing an interpreter
Yeah.
to start building the trust and relationship and see where mom is at. How far is she from our services? Does she know her community? Does she know like where the market is to find her the food? If how new are they to the country, to the region? Where is she at for home basic needs? And then can she and how will she get to us so we can provide the services needed? And for Cheryl is when they're already in school at her site, what words, and Cheryl, please add to it if needed, the to share like what words, if speech is a concern, what words are you hearing at home? Are they in English? Are they in your native language? And I believe that was mostly what
Yeah.
discussion.
So I'm hearing you're approaching it with curiosity, right? You're building a foundation of trust and communication with the family by, we're not necessarily diving in with, hey, you need to go get your child assessed. We're seeing all these things, right? You're approaching it in a gentler way with curiosity. You're asking questions. You want to learn more, like, hey, what resources can we put you in touch with? Here are the things that we can offer, using an interpreter. Love that.
I like also that Emil just started off with, can they even get to like, and do they know the bus system? You have to start at the basics too.
Yeah.
It's like they're already at my site, so I know they can get here, but she's like, yeah, she doesn't have, she might have to go to them.
Great. Great.
This is Angelia. Sorry, I couldn't unmute quick enough. Sorry. So just wanted to tap in about our group. We just talked about curiosity as well. And then also just, exploring the fact that they just came from another country, that there is a barrier learning, get acclimated to this country. So taking all that into consideration, but just exploring, child development in their country and the grandmother's aspect, around child development as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Angelia. All right, sorry, let's, in the interest of time, I'd love to hear from everyone, but we got to move on. Thanks for all your great responses there, folks. All right, so here are some additional possible approaches. I think we went over some of these, but just, to kind of wrap it up, building trust first, right? We're not going to launch right into pointing out what our concerns are. We need to build trust first. We need to get the parents on board with, hey, we're collaborating here by starting with Lily's strengths. Lily has such a focus when she's interested in something. So pointing out what we're noticing that is great about Lily. And then asking about the family's observations. What have you noticed about Lily at home? That's going to give us insight into how they're feeling, right? Is this a concern? Maybe they haven't even noticed it, or maybe they're seeing it as culturally appropriate and not a red flag, as someone said. And then honoring their cultural context. Every family has their own understanding of child development, what's normal, what's not normal. And then, strengthening those protective factors. So social connections, connecting the family with other Chinese speaking families. That's where that family resource navigator idea or, ethnic and cultural affiliation groups can come in by building that social network. And then knowledge, sharing information in the family's language as supporting strengths, like what are children supposed to be doing at this age. And then providing concrete support, offering resources without pushing the evaluation. So maybe like Imelda and Cheryl mentioned, putting them in touch with transportation, food, other resources that are in the community that, just seeing if they have those basics in place first before we can start talking about the evaluation. So the long-term strategy here is we're just planting the seeds. We're not demanding immediate action. Trust takes time, especially when the culture is different from your culture. So using that interpreter, again, as what we consider a cultural broker to help us understand, if it's not our native culture, that's how we bridge those gaps, by using the interpreter to help with the language and then also with the cultural perspective. And, being also mindful that just because you have an interpreter that speaks that same language or that same dialect, they might not be from that same culture themselves. And there's a lot of cultural variation within Asian ethnicities. And so just because they speak the same language doesn't mean that they also understand the same culture. So we want to make sure, and we check in with the family, is this interpreter kind of appropriately speaking on your behalf, or is it not a good fit? And if that's the case, you want to, do your due diligence and make sure that the family feels comfortable with the interpreter, and not just go off of, okay, they speak the same language, we're good to go. We want to make sure that they are culturally a good fit as well. Okay. Any other last minute comments on that one before we move on? Anything in the chat? All right, great responses there. Okay, let's talk about this one. We're not going to break out, but we can just talk about it as a whole group here. So this is a foster care transition. Marcus is a 5-year-old in foster care. He was recently placed with the Campos family. This is his 3rd placement in 18 months. Previous placements ended because of his difficult behaviors. He was having meltdowns, aggression, and refusing to follow directions. His new foster parents are committed, but overwhelmed. So you're the family advocate who just learned that Marcus likely has autism, although he's never been formally diagnosed due to family instability. The Campos family, this is a foster family called, and they're in tears after Marcus had a 2-hour meltdown at the grocery store. So your role as the family advocate supporting the foster family. Which family protective factors are most lacking for Marcus and the foster family? And this kind of leans into trauma. Lots of really good questions here. I don't think we're going to have time to answer all of them, but anyone have any thoughts on this one or had a similar situation? Where would you start with this family?
Sorry, can you go back to the previous slide?
Sure, yes. Let's give a minute to synthesize the case study here and get our thoughts together, and then I'd love to hear from folks.
This makes me think of like the protective factor of like parental resilience because of the overwhelm, and also normalizing that due to a lot of these transitions, that he's already gone through, that it's expected that we're going to see behavioral outbursts, just because it's not easy having to be placed from one family and another family. And so yeah, I think connecting, even like concrete supports too for the family, for them to get connected to other parents, and or parent support groups. And I think in terms of like, he's never been formally diagnosed due to instability. I guess being, I guess, curious as to like what the family knows this far about like his previous placements and what it's been like for him. That way we're gathering information together and learning about his behaviors from previous, and then getting a little bit more curious about his behaviors moving forward and how we could best support him.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ruby. Yeah, anyone else want to add? So this sounds like a challenging situation for any child, right? Not just an autistic child. And the fact that he's displaying signs of autism is kind of an added layer to it, a big added layer on top of, you know, any 5-year-old child who's been in 3 family placements within an 18-month period. You know, that's not even talking about what may have happened prior to that with, you know, his bio family. So, you know, he's likely experienced trauma, a lot of, you know, turmoil and turbulence in his little life. So, you know, that's a lot. And behaviors and meltdowns, aggression, refusal to follow directions, these are all the expected behaviors that we would, you know, naturally kind of expect to see in a child that's experienced this level of, you know, moving around in their young life. So then add to that autism, you know, it makes it very challenging. So, boop, there we go. Immediate support, concrete support, absolutely. So, you know, teaching the family sensory friendly strategies for their daily routines. This would come from OT services or ABA services. So we would need to put them in touch with service providers. But before that, you know, talking about that whole referral trajectory, which we're going to talk about, but, you know, does he have a pediatrician? Can we go to the pediatrician and get that autism diagnosis, even if it's just a working diagnosis or a provisional diagnosis, just in order to get those therapeutic services started, and then, you know, to help support the family with those concrete, you know, tools that can provide consistency throughout his day and to manage his, you know, sensory needs. To create that predictability in his daily routines is so important. And then also potentially providing respite care for the parents to prevent them from burning out. Building those protective factors. So parental resilience, validate, man, this is hard. And celebrating those small wins. Trauma-informed knowledge, understanding neurodiversity, you know, neurodiversity-informed parenting strategies, connecting them with other foster parent support groups and the autism community at large. And then finding ways and tools to help Marcus communicate his needs and regulate his emotions, and then advocacy. So pushing for that formal autism evaluation, coordinating with the therapist, school, and the caseworker, you know, just case management, and ensure that he has placement stability with adequate support, right? So we're not just going to put a child with special needs with a foster care family without doing our due diligence to make sure that they have the supports in place to manage him, and that this is going to be a stable placement where, you know, we're not going to bump him around again. Any other comments or feedback on that one? All right, this one we'll do again as a whole group. So this is the Thompson family. So you're a home visitor who's been working with the Thompson family for 6 months. They have a 3-year-old son named Jamal who is showing signs of autism, but the family has refused all referrals for an evaluation. Mom says, I don't want him labeled. So despite your best communication efforts, building trust, sharing observations, gently offering resources, you did all the right things, right? You followed all the guidelines. But despite all your best intention, the family stopped returning your calls and your program ended up just closing the case. So 2 years later, you run into Jamal's mom at the grocery store. She tells you Jamal was diagnosed with autism last year and is thriving in the services that he's getting. She says, you were right. I just wasn't ready to hear it then. And I don't remember, was it Imelda, were you the one that said that? That sometimes the parents are just not ready, and that is a-okay. They will hear it down the road. And, you know, the story just reminds us that families move on their own timeline and not ours. So despite our intention, the impact may not be what we hope for it to be. And so again, our job is just to plant the seeds that may grow later when the families are ready. And, you know, we want to help, right? Everyone here is in this heart-centered, heart-led work that we're trying to get families the support that they need for the best interest of the child and the family unit as a whole. And so we might see that as a failure, right? We didn't do our job. We didn't help the family. The family didn't follow our guidelines or our direction. But just know that by planting the seed, may still have those conversations, may still have impact down the line. And so sometimes they need to hear it a couple of times from someone else. For whatever reason, it didn't land right the way you said it, or they were just not ready to hear it. And there's nothing you can do about that. That's outside of your control. Other providers will have future opportunities. You know, if a child is autistic, that doesn't go away. They continue to be autistic after they leave your care, and they will encounter other caregivers, hopefully that will continue to say the same message. And over time, when the parent hears it enough or when they're ready, then they will proceed with getting the assessment and getting the diagnosis to get the support that they need. And so your job there is to just trust the process, right? Trust and hope in it is a long game. And maybe you're the first person to encounter this family and you're the first person to plant the seed, and just see it as that. Hey, I planted the seed with the family, and I did my part. I did my due diligence. I trust that this child is going to get the care that they need down the road. Questions, comments on that one? We can't help everyone, unfortunately, as much as we want to. All right, we don't have time for a break. We're going to continue on. We're cruising through to the end here, talking about professional boundaries. So we all have roles. We all have a scope of service that we need to work within, and you know, kind of honor that we can't do everything to help everybody. Here are the things that you can do. You can provide support and resources within your scope. You know, stay in your lane. You can listen with empathy and validate experiences. Sometimes saying something like, I hear you, is let someone know that they were heard today. You know, let someone know that somebody listened and they were heard and they were supported. Just by saying, I hear you, that sounds really hard, can go such a long way with supporting families and building trust. And then making appropriate referrals to other professionals. So if we were all here in this room, you know, with our collective experience, our collective expertise and knowledge and power and access to resources, we would be an unstoppable team that would support every family, right? We could support the family's needs in terms of getting access to resources, social, emotional support, care, childcare, family, community resources, right? We could put all that together along with therapeutic services, speech, ABA, right? We have all those resources here together in this room, but out in the world, you're working directly with that family. You don't have those other superpowers. And so your job is to make those appropriate referrals to other professionals who can fill in those other gaps that the family needs. And share your observations, collaborate with the team members, collaborate with the people that you refer to, so that you can be a whole team that can put, you know, our collective arms around this family and support them to be more resilient and to get the services that they need for their child. So stay within your scope, stay within your lane, listen, provide support, and make those appropriate referrals. You can't provide services outside of your training or your credentials. Everyone knows this, right? You can't make promises about outcomes that you cannot control. and you can't take on responsibilities that belong to other professionals. That's why those other professionals are there, to do their job. You're here to do your job, and you can't solve all families' problems. I think it was you, Cheryl, that said sometimes staff, you get sucked in, you go down the rabbit hole with this family, and you feel like, I'll take you to your appointment, I'll pick up your child. We want to set those professional boundaries and stay within our scope of service. Everyone's role here is so important and crucial, but your role is only one part of this comprehensive support network. And so collaboration is key. And also, sticking to what what you're good at, and what you have the power to do is also very important. So when to refer? When the family needs exceed your scope of practice. We recognize early and often that what this family needs is something outside of what I can provide. That's when I'm going to make a referral. The child needs a specialized assessment or intervention. They need therapy. They need preschool that is outside of my purview as a caseworker. I can refer them to the resource, but I'm not going to be the preschool teacher, right? I'm not going to be the speech therapist. There are safety concerns that require immediate attention. They're parenting in isolation. You want to refer them to a support group. You want to maybe even call, act as a mandated reporter if you're seeing something that is a dangerous situation and the child's health and safety is at risk. Or the family requests services that you can't provide. So these are all opportunities for you to make a referral when these situations come up. And then how do you refer well? So you want to explain why you're making the referral. So you don't want the family to take it like, oh, I'm being rejected, or this person doesn't want to help me. You want to provide it in a way that this is outside of what I can provide. And so let's try to get you what you actually need. Allow me to help you get you what you actually need that is outside of what I can provide. Providing a warm handoff whenever possible. Let's call together. Whenever possible. It's not always possible, but if it is, I invite you to offer to make the call for them or with them. Give specific contact information and next steps. So, instead of saying you should call the regional center, let me go on the website. I'll find the phone number and the email for you, writing it down and giving it to the family rather than just telling them who they should call. So giving them that specific contact information and then next steps. I also encourage families, hey, here's the phone number to the regional center. I recommend that you call them right away. They may not return your phone call right away. Also, there's a high demand for regional center services. So I encourage you to keep calling, be the squeaky wheel, give them that additional push to be resilient, like keep calling, they will call you back. And then follow up to make sure that that connection was made. Hey, did you get a chance to call the regional center? Do you need that phone number again? So closing the loop with them to make sure that they did follow up on the referral that you made. Okay, referral pathways. So there's a kind of a step process here. We want to make sure that the child and family has access to health insurance. So it's a decision tree. Do they have health insurance? If they're new to the country, or they lost their coverage, or somebody lost their job and they lost their health insurance, refer them to Alameda Alliance for Health. This is for folks here in the county, or whatever Medi-Cal provider is in your county. Here in Alameda County, Alameda Alliance for Health, you can go to the website, you can do it with them and help them sign up for health insurance. From there on the website, you can help them select a pediatrician and schedule their first visit with a pediatrician. So there's a find a doctor drop down where they can put in their zip code, they can select their language. It's really easy to navigate. So once they have Alameda Alliance health insurance and they're covered, then they can select a provider that speaks their language and is close to home. And then schedule their first well visit. And this would be the first step in working towards getting a diagnosis or having that developmental assessment to get the child the therapy that they need. Other resources here for children under 3, the Regional Center of the East Bay, and the Bananas and Four Seas and Davis Street. These are all great resources for childcare, access to childcare, parent supports, parent education classes. Davis Street has a food pantry. They have a clothing pantry. So these are resources here in Alameda County, but I'm sure there are other regional center, Golden Gate Regional Center in San Francisco and on the peninsula, and then there's a different one in the South Bay. So your local regional center and then local organizations that can provide support. And then children 3 and up, connecting them with their local school district. So the regional center also supports kids and adults over 3, but for kids under 3, they have the Early Start program that's going to connect them directly with service providers, clinical service providers. You'll have access to these slides after the presentation as well. And you will receive a resource guide that has other phone numbers and connections there that you can share with families. Okay, last part here, professional self-care. So recognizing compassion fatigue. This work is hard and it can be draining, right? And so we know that you can't pour from an empty cup, especially if you're doing this work during the day and then going home to take care of your own family or your own child that has special needs of their own. So, you know, it is not, it's not hard to get overwhelmed by families' needs and, you know, difficulties separating your work from your personal life, and you start to recognize these signs of fatigue and burnout, like increased irritability or avoiding certain families or situations. So taking care of yourself is absolutely essential to continue doing this work and providing quality support to the families that we serve. It's important to build your own resilience toolkit. So taking breaks, debriefing, right? Talking about challenging situations with a coworker or teammate, celebrating the small wins. So when the family does get that autism diagnosis, it's going to open up opportunities for them to get the therapy and support that they need. And setting realistic expectations. Remember to, we can't help everyone, and you just planting that seed with the family is so important, and it might lead to better outcomes down the road. Creating transition rituals for yourself, engaging in physical activity, all the ways that we build our resilience toolkit, getting out in nature, taking a break, you know, putting your phone down, connecting with your support network, and practicing hobbies that are unrelated to work. All right, last one here. How well are you currently maintaining your professional self-care? All right. All right. Okay. All right, so the exercise that I'm going to leave you with is a 30-day action plan. So this is for you to take home and for these skills to continue on after this, this presentation ends. So Leah, do you want to go ahead and share the handout in the chat? And if you can't access it in the chat, it's also going to be available after the presentation. And so your action plan is going to include 3 goals, and I encourage you to do at least one, if not all 3. The first one is a communication strategy to practice with your families. Goal number 2 is a family protective factor to strengthen. And goal 3 is a self-care commitment. And you can take this exercise and share it with your organization, share it with your team, you know, encourage everyone to do it. Everyone to pick 1 goal or 2 goals, and that way you guys can act as accountability partners. It's important to pick an accountability partner that you can check in with regularly to keep you on track, right? Make sure that you're holding yourself accountable to your goals here. So I'm not sure if we're going to have time to actually complete the action plan worksheet, but can everyone see it in the chat? Let's see. All right, go ahead and download that. Let's just take a look at it real quick. See if anyone has any questions. Again, this is a tool for you to use. And I encourage you to set some goals for yourself so that you can continue working on these skills and building your toolkit. try to be as realistic as possible when you think about your answers to these items here. So rather than, I'm going to do a better job in listening, maybe think about one family in specific that you're having a challenge with right now and commit to a strategy that you're going to try to use with that family in particular. And maybe the strategy is allowing yourself to let go and understand that you've planted the seeds already, and it within the spirit of self-care, allowing yourself to trust that process that you planted the seed, and that this family is maybe not going to be on board with what you're recommending, and that's okay. So taking care of yourself in that way. All right, and then lastly, before we go, I'd like you to share one thing from your action plan that you're committed to trying in the next week. And I guess, again, I want you to be as specific as possible here. Don't share any names, but let's make it relevant to your particular work and your role. We got a couple of minutes here, so take your time with this last question, please. I want to hear from folks. Love that. Listening without assuming I already have the answer. Not send too many resources, so it's not overwhelming. Love that. Good stuff, everybody. Don't forget your self-care commitment. Anyone have any self-care commitment goals? All right, I hope that I leave you with some encouragement to take care of yourselves as well, okay? Thanks for your participation. All right, so remember to practice those 3 goals or 1 goal or 2 goals, whatever is within your capacity this month. With the holidays coming up too, that can be an opportunity for exacerbated stress in our personal lives. So, make sure that you take time to take care of yourself. Check in. Maybe you want to start keeping a journal of how you're doing, just to kind of hold yourself accountable. If you don't have access to an accountability partner, again, I encourage you to share it with your team and notice not just what's working, but what's not working, but see if implementing some of these strategies are helping you in your day-to-day work, and helping build those bridges. So remember, small, consistent changes can make the biggest impact. As long as you're consistent, that can make all the difference. Some takeaways here. I'm going to highlight this one. Self-care is essential, not optional. Any last minute questions or comments?
I did have a question in regard to like financial assistance programs for children that have been given a diagnosis and that's already been established. I saw that like on the resource list, like, you know, Alameda County Social Services and the Regional Center, would those be two places to start in terms of like getting connected to financial support?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are great resources. Does anyone here have access to other resources? There's also, you know, state disability that folks can apply for. And well, respite care through the regional center as well, where a care provider can come and like a babysitter that's trained to allow parents a break. That's not necessarily financial, but it could be covered by the regional center, so you wouldn't have to pay. We know we're in a time right now where government assistance is being stripped across the board, and it's a tough time for our families. And so just keep it, you know, if anyone else has a better answer that's out there in the community on the front lines and can share with Ruby. But yeah, the resources are definitely dwindling. And luckily we're in California where things are still kind of trying to be provided to families, but those are some good places to start. Anyone else? All right, that brings us to the end. Remember, you are building bridges. The work that you do really matters, and the families and children that you support are so fortunate to have you. So a heartfelt thank you for all the work that you do in our community, and keep doing the hard work. Take care of yourselves and be well. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.
Thank you.
All right. I want to thank Claire. Again, we love working with you, and thank you so much for your time today. Thank you everyone who came and joined us today.